Hello, and welcome to the 15-Minute Book Club. As we're still a little bit new doing this, we'll just give you a run through of what the plan is. Basically, on this show, we give authors 15 whole unedited minutes to sell us their book, convince you to add their book to the pile of shame that props up most of our houses. So this week, we've got an excellent guest, and I'll hand over to Alex Churchill, author and historian, her off the telly, to tell us all about it.
Thanks, Matt. I love this person. Like, not only is this person one of the smartest people that I know, it's also one of the best humans that I know as well. And I say this with so much love, in spite of the fact that he's a Liverpool fan as well. This man is an absolute master of 20th century German history. It's Mr. Frank McDonough. Hello, Frank.
Hi, Alex. Keep talking.
Oh, we're so thrilled to have you here.
You're wonderful yourself. You're wonderful. You're fantastic.
Oh, he's one of
Brilliant.
my besties. Love Frank. Right. Okay, Frank, should we do this?
Yeah. What do you want me to do?
Okay, right. We're going to start the clock and then
Right.
5 questions at you.
Okay, hang on a second. We got timer going. Let's do this. You can tell this show's still a little bit new because I forgot to get the timer ready. Right, okay.
Takes 50 minutes to set up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you know us, Frank. We're pros. So,
Cool. Yeah.
Right, your 15 minutes begins now.
Frank, top line. You had already done 2 books on Nazi Germany and pre-Nazi Germany. And why another one? How did you pitch this to your publisher?
Well, I think the first idea was to do a different way of structuring the Third Reich. So I came up with this idea of the Hitler years, and the years was the structure. Because I thought, how can I bring something new to this? And I thought, well, it's very hard to bring something new to such a well-known story. But if I tell it in a different way, in a different structure, then people can enjoy it and read it again. So I came up with the idea of a year-by-year narrative. So every chapter in the Hitler years is a year. So it starts in, January 1933, goes all the way through to the end of that year. Then we pick up the next year, 34. And the other thing about these books, I should mention it because not always the reviewers catch on to this. It's full of illustrations. There's about 100 photographs in each of these volumes, and many of them you've never seen before, because we have a picture researcher who I give her the idea for what to go and look for, and she comes up with them and says, "What do you think of this one?" or "What do you think of that one?" So that's the difference, and I think because you're doing it a different way, because as you know, I've retired now. I used to be an academic, a university professor, and you take a lot for granted in academic writing. You write thematically, for example. Now, with thematic books, you're saying to the reader, I know that you know most of this story anyway, so I'm giving you a shortcut. So with this one, I'm cutting out the academic side of it by turning it into a year-by-year narrative, so the reader can follow it. And I'm aiming these books at the general reader, the person who has a job during the week or whatever, and at the weekend buys a book and reads the book. So I'm going for the general reader, really. That's my audience. So that's how it started. So the first volume was called Triumph 1933 to 1939. You should have stopped there, really, shouldn't he?
Yeah, hindsight.
If you stop there, then we might have a different perspective on him. The next one is 1940 to 45, and it's called Disaster. It's not a disaster for the rest of the world, but it's a big disaster for him. And then the publisher said, "Why don't you do a prequel? Why don't you do The Rise of Hitler in another book?" So I did one called The Weimar Years, which is sort of volume 1, really, of this rise and fall of the Third Reich, really. And then the publisher again said, "Why don't you write a book on the Holocaust?" And I said, "Oh, it's quite harrowing, and I did write an undergraduate book about the Holocaust, and I'm not sure. And he said, but it would round it out if you did it. I said, well, I'd have to do it as a separate book, but part of the series, really. So that's how it started. So then it becomes the Holocaust, but year by year starts in Germany and then spreads out into Poland, then spreads out to the Soviet Union, then Hungary, and then towards the end. So that's how it all came about, really. And I'm really pleased that the reviewers really like it. One guy in the Telegraph said this is like being guided by an expert through this field, and it's a great book. And then the Times has said that that this brings the Holocaust alive for a new generation of readers, and it's a succinct history of the subject. So I'm really pleased with how it's been received. Although writing it is quite harrowing, writing it, to be honest.
How, if people haven't read the previous volumes, Frank, how did the Holocaust play into those ones as compared to this one, which is specifically looking at it year by year?
Well, I think that in the previous volumes, the persecution of Jews is there, and also it looks at the Holocaust in the war as well. But I think that once you start to go into something in much more depth, like I didn't look at, for example, the level of persecution at the local level in the first volumes. Whereas in this one, I actually look at the early part of the book is the persecution of ordinary Germans, German Jews rather, and how they were treated by the regime. And I think that people have not really sort of glimpsed though the Jewish responses in Germany, really. So I do a lot of that, and I look at the Olympic Games, for example, when they took posters down, anti-Semitic posters down, and things like that. And of course, then it leads up to the Night of the Broken Glass. I think what I show is that how harrowing it is to be a Jew in Germany between 1933 and 39. And you're already saying, and I'm already saying, look, this is getting radical and dangerous already. And I think 1939, I call that chapter Hitler Makes a Prophecy. And that prophecy is in a speech that he gave in January 1939, in which he says that if there's a global war, the Jews will face annihilation. That's the first time he's ever said that in a speech.
It's shocking, isn't it? I think so. You had a launch a few weeks ago, and lovely Paul McGann, who does the audiobook and is your basically we nicknamed him your Batman because he goes everywhere and looks after you. He read a couple of excerpts, and
He's my bodyguard.
He is your bodyguard. I think hearing him read excerpts, you are an academic, but it was very clear that this is not an academic book because you have used voices of people who were there to give their version of the story. And you're very much, like that reviewer said, guiding people through the content as opposed to lecturing them as a university professor would. You have really given the stage to the eyewitnesses, haven't you?
Oh, yes. I think the eyewitness accounts, I think, make this book. And as they go on, they get worse, because, first of all, they're describing their own persecution, which is horrible in itself. It's like when you were back at school getting bullied and you read about some of the things that they did. For example, in the first two chapters, I look at some of the things they were doing to Jews that were going on then, when people don't see that as like an era of brutal repression against Jews. But in fact, I show they were doing these pillory marches. These were like medieval. They used to take people through towns. They committed some sin. Sometimes it was just adultery or something like that, which was seen as a crime then. And they'd put a sign on them saying, "I am an adulterer" or whatever. And this used to go on in Britain as well. These pillory marches, they take people through the streets, they throw rotting vegetables at them. Suppose the stocks is the same, where they used to have the medieval stocks. So that's sort of the same. And here they were doing the same thing. They were taking people who were Jews, and one of them was a lawyer. He was taken through. I show this pillory march of this lawyer in Munich, and they put a sign on him saying, "I will no longer judge the Aryan race," or something like that. And then they march him through the streets of the local railway station, and then they basically kick his head in, really. There's that. And then in 1934, I also relate this story of this beer hall in Gusenhausen. And in that one, it's been said that, this guy, this landlord, uh, he is serving Aryans, this Jewish landlord is serving Aryans, and this is seen as a bad thing. So they go in, they attack the landlord, they attack his son, and then there's like a kind of orgy of vandalism through the town, and 2 people are killed. So these things were going on anyway. And what I show is that the central government, Hitler's government, is letting the local stormtroopers and activists carry out their sort of hooliganism at the local level. So I show that. So really, I show how it starts at the local level, and then when they get control of the stormtroopers later on, it becomes bureaucratic. It comes into the SS and the SA, the SD, the security police, and then Himmler and Heydrich take over it, and then they run it more as a more brutal, organized persecution.
When you go through your narrative, do you look at the other people that were swept up in the persecution of the Holocaust, thinking of homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Romani? How
that would be a different book. If I call this genocide, then it would. That's what you do. If you call on something genocide, you'd include all these non-Jewish victims in it. So I decided that it would be too big. It's almost another book, the genocide of Hitler. You'd have to do a whole chapter on Soviet prisoners of war, gay people, Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, communists, clerics, Christian clerics, vicars and priests. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back to the definition of what happened to the Jewish people. So this really is the story of the Jewish Holocaust in this book. And it's a big enough, it's a big enough story. It's a fat enough book. I mean, the other books were like door stoppers, the 2 other ones I did. So I wanted to write a concise history of the Holocaust, the Jewish, the attempt by Hitler to carry out his plan, which was already in his mind anyway, to destroy Europe's Jews, all of them.
We're coming up on Mr. Gammon, so let's do a quick one before the timer goes off. Let's see. You mentioned how harrowing it was to write. Is there one person, one eyewitness that has stuck with you? Like, who do you keep thinking about?
I think the eyewitness that sticks with me is the person who watches the Baba Yar massacre. This was where about 30,000 Jews were massacred over 2 days. And one guy gives an account of what happens over those 2 days. And his account is so harrowing. It really is. I felt I had to relay it. Like you said before, let the reader find out what the. I tend to do that. I tend to not tell you what to think. I say, look, this is what happened. Listen to this guy, and let you decide. Let you decide what you think about it. But that one sticks. Also, the guy. There's a terrible episode in Kaunas where this guy he beats about 50 Jews to death with a big crowbar, and at the end of it, he holds the crowbar up, as like a prize of what he's done. Now, again, that's a local area where he's not a member of the Nazi Party at all. He's anti-Semitic, just as all the people in that area were. So it also shows that other nationalities got involved in the Holocaust, and they didn't need to be paid or coerced to do it. They were there to persecute the Jews as well.
We're almost there. We're almost there. Don't worry. We can ask this stupid question in a second. This might be a stupid question, but we'll find out. How does, as as a retired academic, as you called yourself a minute ago, how does delving into this sort of affect you as you write? Because you have these because it's always the sort of first person accounts that are the ones that sort of live rent free in my mind after I've read them. How do you sort of disengage from this sort of subject? Is it a long process, or is it something you can just go, right, I'm moving on now?
Well, it's not easy. I mean, I suppose now, writing these books is my sort of main hobby, if you like. Now I don't have a day job, so I find it's a good thing actually. If you're retired, it's good to have something to do. you know, it is good to have something to do. I mean, I'm almost like one of them characters from Crazy. I go to this cafe and they all know who I am. Oh, it's Frank, blah blah blah. And it's like sort of every Monday I go there and it's like this sort of Frasier sort of 20 minutes, and while they make my breakfast, so you get those kind of things with being retired. I think it sticks with you more. I think that because when I was working, remember, I mean, I had a weird life really, because every time I went to work, I did a lecture in front of 100 people. So that's kind of weird, really, because you're not ready to one, but
Okay, Mr. Gammon Frank, right. So this is the part of the show where you have 1 minute to bat off what we think might be the stupidest thing someone is going to say about your book on the internet. So, ready? Frank, my man, it's Christmas. This is some depressing stuff. Why in 2025 do we need yet another book about the Holocaust?
Oh, this is the one that sort of always gets me. That people say, "Why do we need another book about Hitler?" And you think to yourself, "Hang on a minute! Every single book that comes out about Hitler sells enormous quantities. That's why we have books about Hitler." I mean, you'd like to say, "Oh, there's something new to tell," but I don't think that there is something new to tell, really. I say, and this is what I'm doing, it's the way I tell them. It's that I've been writing on this subject, for what, 40 years. So I feel as though it's my time to say something. We've had William Shirer.
Time's up.
Oh, well done, Frank. Thank you so much. Right. Don't worry. We'll let you finish that thought on the Patreon extra time, because what we do now, for everyone who's not a Patreon subscriber, thank you so much for listening. Please do buy a copy of Frank's book. It's called A Holocaust Years. It's out now. It's published by Head of Zeus and it is fantastic. Again, audiobook, Paul McGann, lovely soothing voice for some quite terrible material. Bye-bye. For the rest of you, we're going to carry on. Go on.
I was just going to say, if that was a bit hardcore, we're talking about fake rock bands next week. So, yeah. Be sure to
fake rock bands in the Cold War.
Around for that. Thank you, everybody. And
go on.
No, we're still working out our sort of style.
Yeah, we need like a hand signal, like an ear tug, don't we? That says like, I'm going next. Anyway, Patreon people, stick with us. We're going to carry on for 15 minutes more. We're going to carry on talking about William Shirer. And I've got some questions for Frank about how the book got written and the behind the scenes for it. So the rest of you, bye-bye.